For over a century, people with type 1 diabetes have lived with a constant routine: blood sugar checks, insulin injections, and strict diets. Imagine if all of that could be replaced with a single, one-time treatment that makes your body produce insulin again. I'm Peter, and welcome back to the Second Opinion Network. While this channel is largely focused on cancer, exploring second opinions, cutting-edge treatments, and patient choices every now and then, a medical breakthrough is simply too big not to share. Today, we'll look at the first human case where gene-edited cells gave someone with type 1 diabetes the ability to make their own insulin again. The problem with type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes isn't about diet or lifestyle. It's an autoimmune condition. The body's own immune system mistakenly destroys pancreatic beta cells, the very cells that produce insulin. Without insulin, sugar stays in the blood instead of entering cells for energy. That leads to fatigue, long-term organ damage, and without treatment, death. Right now, the only option is lifelong insulin therapy. Pumps and artificial pancreas systems make it more manageable, but they don't solve the root problem: the missing cells. Doctors have tried islet cell transplants, but there is a catch. The immune system attacks them, just as it attacked the patient's own. The only way around that has been powerful immunosuppressive drugs, which leave patients vulnerable to infections and even cancers. So the dream has always been, could he put back working cells without the immune system destroying them? Living with type 1, the human side. To understand why this matters, it helps to picture daily life with type 1. Every meal becomes a calculation. Every exercise session carries risk. Patients prick their fingers multiple times a day, inject insulin, or wear a pump that never comes off. Parents of young children with diabetes set alarms at night to check blood sugar, because a dangerous low while sleeping can be life-threatening. It isn't just a medical condition. It's a relentless 24/7 job that never takes a holiday. A diagnosis of type 1 doesn't just affect the patient, it reshapes the entire family's life. Vacations, sports, and even sleepovers become logistical challenges. That's why a treatment that restores natural insulin production isn't just about numbers on a chart. It's about giving people back freedom. Freedom to eat without planning every bite. Freedom to exercise without fear. Freedom for parents to sleep through the night without alarms. The CRISPR solution: cells in stealth mode. That's where CRISPR comes in. Scientists from Sweden and the US took healthy donor islet cells and used CRISPR-Cas12b gene editing to reprogram them. They switched off two genes that normally act like foreign ID cards to the immune system. Then they boosted a protein called CD47, which works like a biological shield, sending a signal that says, "Don't eat me." In other words, they created hypoimmune cells, cells that can survive inside the body without being attacked. Think of it like giving the new cells an invisibility cloak. The first patient, a real story. The first person to receive these edited cells was a 42-year-old man who had lived with type 1 diabetes for most of his life. He knew the exhausting routine: multiple daily insulin shots, planning meals, worrying about sugar highs and dangerous lows. He described the feeling of living with constant background anxiety, knowing that even one missed injection or one wrong calculation could be dangerous. For him, the idea of cells that could work silently in his body felt almost like science fiction. Then came the moment of truth. Nearly 80 million of these engineered cells were injected into the muscle of his forearm, a surprisingly simple outpatient procedure compared to organ transplants. So what happened next? Did it work? 4 months later, doctors tested his blood after meals. For the first time in decades, his body was producing C-peptide, a direct marker that insulin was being made naturally inside him. Even more striking, the transplanted cells were still alive, still working, and his immune system hadn't attacked them, despite him taking no immunosuppressive drugs at all. This wasn't just a lab result. For this man, it meant freedom, at least partially, from the endless cycle of injections and monitoring. Why this matters. For millions of people with type 1 diabetes, this is more than promising. It's potentially life-changing. Instead of managing the disease, this approach goes after the root cause, replacing the lost beta cells with ones the immune system can't reject. And diabetes might just be the beginning. If hypoimmune cells can be engineered to survive, the same strategy could extend to Parkinson's disease, replacing dopamine-producing neurons, heart disease, repairing damaged muscle, spinal cord injury, restoring nerve function, liver failure, regenerating tissue without full transplants, autoimmune conditions where cells could be shielded from attack, and even cancer by creating cell therapies that last longer inside the body. Each of these areas has millions of patients desperately waiting for better answers, and the ripple effects go beyond health. Longer lives, lower healthcare costs, and less burden on families and caregivers. But there's a catch. Of course, we have to be realistic. This was one patient. It worked for months. But will it work for years? Will the immune system eventually find a way to attack? And can scientists manufacture these cells at the massive scale needed for widespread use? There are also ethical questions. How do we ensure access is fair? How do we monitor long-term risks of edited cells? And how do we balance speed with safety? These are open questions. The history of medicine is full of promising firsts that took years or decades before becoming standard. Still, in science, the hardest step is often the first, and that step has now been taken. Let me ask you this. Would you trust gene-edited cells in your body if it meant ending daily insulin injections? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to hear how you'd weigh the risks and rewards. It's also worth mentioning that CRISPR isn't the only approach being tested. In China, researchers have reported early successes using stem cell-based therapies, including cases where patients' own cells were reprogrammed into insulin-producing clusters. Some of these patients went insulin-free for over a year. But like the CRISPR breakthrough, these are still small, early-stage studies. Will need larger, longer trials before we know whether either approach can become a real cure. And in fact, we'll cover these stem cell stories in more detail in a future video. Looking back and ahead. To put this in context, insulin was first discovered in 1921. It turned type 1 diabetes from a death sentence into a chronic, survivable disease. 100 years later, CRISPR may be writing the next chapter, one where insulin injections aren't needed at all. And this breakthrough doesn't stand alone. We've seen similar first patient moments before. The first CAR-T therapy for leukemia, the first gene therapy for blindness, the first mRNA vaccines for COVID. Each started as an experiment that many thought might never scale. Yet today, millions have benefited. History tells us that these early milestones matter, even if they take time. The first kidney transplant in 1954 was just one patient. Today, tens of thousands of organ transplants are performed each year. The first child cured of leukemia with CAR-T was a single case in 2012. Today, CAR-T is approved worldwide. Imagine a newly diagnosed patient in the future. Instead of starting on lifelong insulin, they receive a simple cell implant. Their body quietly does what it was always meant to do, produce insulin naturally. That vision feels closer than ever. If this video helped explain how CRISPR could reshape diabetes treatment, or gave you hope about where medicine is heading, please take 1 second to like this video. Subscribe to the Second Opinion Network. It's free, and you'll be notified when new videos go live. And most importantly, share it with that one person who could be helped. They may not have heard about this breakthrough yet, but you could be the one to put it on their radar. It might be the most important thing you do for them today. I'm Peter, and this is the Second Opinion Network. Until next time, stay informed, stay strong, and stay supported.